Brad, how you doing?
Very well. How you doing, Randy?
Excellent, thanks. Really excited today for episode 136 of the Tech Sales Insights podcast, brought to you by Sales Community. For those that are members, thank you. For those that are not, Tucker will throw a link up. You can get a free membership if you click on there. Really excited to have Brad Rinklin, the EVP and CMO at Infoblox. Awesome, huge, great growing company. Certainly have a lot of great things going on, and has a great partnership with Mitch Breen, is a partner in crime on the sales side. So lots of great stuff you'll hear today. Title topic is from buyer persona to qualified opportunity. So one we've not had, so that'll be great as well. And brought to you by Decision Link, who has recently merged with or been acquired by X Factor. So they're our value selling platform sponsor of Sales Community, and Brad and Infoblox are also happy customers. So we'll hear more there about what they're up to on the value selling side. Brad lives in Andover, Massachusetts, 4 kids, 2 that are in college, 2 that are in high school, and is a former rugby player. I didn't tell you when we were prepping. That's actually my rugby jersey from an award thing I got a while back. But he also has 3 of his 4 actually play rugby as well, which is really cool. And something, I don't know as if I know anybody else or any other American, you actually played Australian rules football for the United States national team. Is that right?
That is right. For about 5 or 6 years. It was great. A lot of fun.
That had to be an amazing experience.
It was. It certainly was. And made some great friends, and the team is doing great. And they're about to head down to Australia here in a couple months and try to win the cup.
Very cool. And by way of introduction, also have some other friends that gave me some comments. So Mitch Breen, who's your Chief Revenue Officer and EVP of Sales. One of the most well-rounded executives in all of tech, from being an SC early on to sales leadership to world-class CMO, has experience building market leaders as well as diving in and driving and growing pre-IPO startups. Lastly, he recently threw out the first pitch at a Seattle Mariners AAA game, and you tossed a 90 miles an hour fastball.
He might have added an extra 10 or 12 miles onto that one, but yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. The nerve-wracking. You never realize how nerve-wracking that would be in front of a big group. I'm just like, in my head, I'm going to bounce this, or I'm going to hit the mascot. Luckily, it went down the middle. It was good.
That's awesome. I've got a younger one who's in the minor leagues with the White Sox as a pitcher.
Very nice.
Good
luck to him.
And then Joe Gately, who runs the America's business for you, says Brad's diverse experience in sales productivity, alliances, and marketing makes him a very effective leader that can bridge the overall marketing function with sales and partner execution, which is a big deal because that is not the case, certainly for a lot of my CRO friends, for sure. Yeah. Over the last year at Infoblox, I've come to rely on Brad as a great partner in sharpening our go-to-market and enabling our sales teams. He's also building a team of people and investing in a tech stack that will help us drive business. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then Terry Flynn says Brad is sales engineer turned sales rep turned marketer, focuses on the buyer's needs and pains to create demand with prospects and connect with sales. So another way to probably reword what our title topic is. So shows
sure, that's it. Yeah,
we're really passionate about it. So it's great. Wow. So jumping in the questions, you were undergrad at Baylor '93, econ marketing, played soccer as well.
Right, sure did. Yeah, I was a keeper.
Very cool. Yeah. And then what was your first job from there?
Right out of college, about 2 weeks out of college, I started in a company in Dallas. Moved right up 35 and went to Dallas to work for a company called New Horizons Computer Learning Center. So I started out actually doing computer training people yours and my age, Randy, back in '93 on how to use computers, because so many of the professionals in that particular period had never worked on a PC or leveraged any type of computer. So started off there, moved into even more technical training and teaching professionals how to use Novell NetWare and Microsoft NT, as well as Citrix and others. And then ultimately moved into a sales leadership job on that, and then ran that business. So it was fun.
Awesome. Very cool. And then you've had an impressive career from there, but maybe just kind of quickly go through that.
Yeah, I transitioned from that company right into Akamai Technologies in Boston. In fact, moved from Dallas down to Houston, then ultimately up to Boston with the previous company, and then moved into the role of an SE. We called it a technical consultant back in the day with Akamai. And it was the go-go days of the internet, right? We would just walk in and show them our logo and tell them that we'd help out with their website, and they would just give us, their wallets. It was amazing. And then, of course, a year and a half later, that bubble popped, and we actually had to learn how to sell and kind of rethink our go-to-market strategy. So, did that for some time, and then ultimately carried a bag selling our security solution, and then moved into marketing to help with sales enablement trainings and sales productivity, which we built the role that I was in the image of the sales productivity role that EMC made famous back in the day. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. Ultimately, got the opportunity to run marketing, and then actually moved into running marketing and the alliances and channel organization within Akamai, which was an amazing experience.
Wow, that was a lot over almost 16 years, right?
16 years, yeah. I think when I became the CMO there, I was I think it was the 13th head of marketing, and that was in the span of 9 years of the company's history. So the first thing I had to figure out right off the bat was what did all my predecessors do that was wrong, and make sure I didn't step in that pothole. So
there you go. That's great. And then from there.
I left Akamai to go work for a TPG-backed private equity company that's focused in on the financial technology space called Eze Software. Went over there to help them take what was predominantly an on-prem system, that had been very much adopted by a number of the hedge funds out there for their order management, execution management, and portfolio management systems. But to help them with the vision of creating a fully in the cloud browser-based system to replace all of those. And it was an interesting thing. The big large institutions, financial institutions, and investment houses and the hedge funds weren't really leaning heavily into new technology. But I'll be honest with you, we got it sold over to SS&C right in time for SS&C to really get a huge benefit from that purchase, because COVID hit a year later. And you think about it, all those traders that were all sitting on the trading floor of all those institutions were now at home. And if they leveraged this technology, well, then they just logged into the browser and they had everything where they needed to be. So it was great. Worked out well. And so we sold SS&C, and a couple months later, not even a couple months later, I guess, a nice Christmas break later. I think it was 2.5 weeks that I had between Eze. I started at Carbon Black, which was a very successful security business, specifically cybersecurity business, specifically around endpoint security. And it was probably about 7 months after their IPO, and we got bought by VMware about 7 months later. So it was a quick turn. I had a great year and a half there as I transitioned Carbon Black over to and gave the keys to VMware. To run that business now as a division of their security business. So,
awesome. How did you ever get to Infoblox?
Well, I took about a year to do some work with some former colleagues on some advising and working with some of the smaller startups that were trying to kind of replicate some of our success that we had at Akamai. And I got a call from Jesper. Jesper Anderson was the CEO of Infoblox, and he sold me on the vision of a very similar concept of taking a predominantly on-prem business and moving it to a SaaS model. Cannibalizing the on-prem business was originally the thought, and I really liked him. And then I met the number of the other executives, including Mitch Breen, and Mitch and I hit it off from the first phone call. In discussion around the opportunity, the space, the people that we were working with across the board. I felt a very quick connection to Mitch, and was always impressed with Jesper. So I decided to hang up the advisory shoes and jump back into the business. So it's been a lot of fun. Been here for a little over 2 years now. So.
Oh, that's great. Plus, it's just nice to be with great people, right? So knowing you and Terry and Joe and Mitch, I mean, you must have some laughs as well, right?
We certainly have our fair share of laughs, and it is a lot of fun to work with them. Not just because they're great guys, but because they also come with a great deal of knowledge. Really smart thinkers. A lot of fun to work problems together with, and move the needle. So
Awesome. And Hopi, Dan Pearl, others. I don't mean.
all those guys,
Yeah.
all they're great. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So if you think about impressive career, any kind of one or two things that you'd say have kind of really been responsible for your success?
Well, I think the number one thing, and it's even analogous to the topic we're talking about here in a little bit, is just the focus on the customer. And I think that I've always wanted to be in a role where I had connection with the customer. If I ever offered in a role where I'm going to have to sit in the back of the office in a cube or in a closet, working on stuff where I don't talk to customers, it's not a role for me. So I gain a lot of energy out of understanding the customers, the buyers, what makes them tick, why they like our products or why they like someone else's products, to help me grow. And I think that's been a foundation that has really helped me a great deal. I think the other aspect is it's just that growing up, my father was in the United States Air Force for 32 years. I learned a great deal of leadership from him, a lot of lessons. Kind of watched him, and how he both commanded his troops or squadrons, but also just conducted himself. And it was a great crash course for me, as I moved into leadership roles within business. So I think those are two foundational pieces that I have always hung my hat on as reasons for my success.
Awesome. And for those that are watching or listening, feel free to post any questions or make any comments as we go here as well. So let's dive in a little bit more with Infoblox. I can't believe 75% of the Fortune 1000
Mhm.
companies are customers. That's
Yeah.
great.
It's great. We sell a foundational product for the networking side. It's really a critical system that every one of these enterprises in the Fortune 1000 needs, which is great. And so having a war chest of customers that are long and happy customers really helps our business in our long term plans and growth. Right, when we create new products that we can go back in and sell into those customers, they already know us, they love us, and it makes it that much more easy to do. But the business has been around for 23 years, so it has been in business for quite some time, and it has always been really that 800-pound gorilla when it comes to the networking side of our business, which is selling the DNS and DHCP and IP address management systems.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then do you have kind of talking about the personas, but kind of from an ideal customer profile, you're kind of segmented different areas based on type of companies and everything else, correct?
Yeah. We definitely have our ICPs locked up for both our networking and our security products. On the networking side, we generally focus our efforts on customers that have more than 1,000 employees and up, obviously. So the status quo pain point of the systems that everybody has when they start up a business, which is just Microsoft DNS and the DNS suite that they have. The pain points of operational challenges and outages and whatnot really don't start to hit critical mass until about that 1,000 employee business. And of course, the more you get, the more crazy it gets. And so there becomes some pain enough for us to be able to see and walk in and find active pain to be able to sell to. And then the more sites they have, the more remote sites. The trends right now are great for us because more and more companies are moving to multi-cloud environments. More and more companies are leveraging technology to be able to have their full remote workforce, but they're also still connecting remote sites. All of those things are added into the ICP, and so we're looking for customers over 1,000 employees, multiple sites, multiple clouds, lots of IoT or OT. And then we know that the environment exists for us to be able to go in and either uncover latent pain or find that active pain.
Wow, amazing. And you've got also a big channel business as well, right?
Yeah.
By George.
Yeah. So our channel business, first of all, our go to market is our first motion is primarily through channel. In fact, we try to to hit 100% of the business going through the channel. And we don't hit that 100%, but that's our goal. That's our motion. We know that force motor supplier is so very important for our long-term future. We are in the middle of looking at how we kind of categorize our partners and how we enable them. We've actually just rolled out a brand new partner program that's focused around getting focused partners to up and running in security. So enabling, actually doing the training doesn't cost them a thing, but if they're interested in working with us, we'll train them up on the security product as well as the security market if they need to be, and then work together with them to look at overall territory and their install base and give them the ideal customer profile for their customer base, so they can say, okay, this is the target we're going to hit and we're going to go after it. So it's been good. We rolled out that new program just earlier this year, this calendar year, and it's already starting to kind of bear fruit. So we're excited about it.
That's great. And then are the channel partners mostly you've got the traditional VARs, national, regional, as well as the boutique security networking players?
That's right. We do have distributors that we work with. We do have those big, those large, national VARs that we will work with. But those boutique partners sometimes are some of the better ones that we work with, because they really lean in. They have the bandwidth and agility to work with a new partner like us and really take our value proposition to market. And then we do have two products. We have the networking product and the security product. On the security side, it may be with an MSSP or an MDR or XDR companies that actually are selling outsourced security services to companies. And then, of course, we simply plug into their portfolio of services that they would provide. And those are up and coming for us. It's been an area where we are very interested in growing that particular area. So there's MSSPs are out there that are interested in adding DNS detect and response to their portfolio, and we're definitely willing to talk to them and get things moving, because we know that is a sweet spot for where the companies are kind of moving. There's just not enough resources and not enough skill sets out there, or people with skill sets in security to be able to hire and run a full security operation command center from these companies. So they're simply outsourcing it, and it's working quite well.
Oh, that's great. So from the go-to-market side, sounds like everything's going great. Do you have any challenges?
Well, sure. I mean, I think we're always, we think about that go-to-market engine just like any other engine. There's always going to be something going on within that engine that's preventing it from being, fully operational in 99.9% in its output. And so, we're looking at a couple different areas. We're looking at, we've in the last year and a half kind of bifurcated our approach. One on the smaller side of the ICP, so that 1,000 to 5,000 customers, creating a sales force that focuses on that commercial side. The value proposition doesn't necessarily change greatly, but some of the things that we're focused on within that value proposition might tweak a little bit, because there's going to be challenges that a 100,000 employee enterprise has that of course a 5,000 employee enterprise won't have. And so we have this new commercial sales force going after that. We've actually even kind of put together new bundles of our products to be focused on that particular market. But that freed up the enterprise sellers to not be distracted by the smaller companies that they had opportunities in, and really focusing them on up the market. And so that's been a very good change. We've been focusing on trying to evolve that go-to-market. I also think it's always interesting, and I had the same exact challenge when VMware bought Carbon Black. So you had this traditional, I guess not traditional, but I guess a networking company, a very focused networking company, now trying to sell security. So when you have a sales force that's so very used to talking to the CIO in the networking side of the business, and you say, now go sell security. Well, first of all, a lot of times you want to start that conversation with the people that you already have contacts with, which is the networking side. And the networking buyer goes, yeah, sounds interesting. It's not really, my area of expertise. You should go talk to somebody else. And then, the reps, generally get discouraged about the conversation, and they stop kind of talking about that. And so we have to systematically educate a sales force to kind of do an unnatural act, which is move to a completely different buying center that they're not used to talking to, and especially talking to a buyer that can be very intimidating. The CISO and the security buyer, they know things that that we're not supposed to know, and they ask questions that we don't know the answers to. And so for any seller, and I'm speaking from experience, the last thing we want to do is be in a situation where we don't look smart. And so that becomes a big challenge. And so we have been working very hard. Mitch and Terry and Dan Pearl and Joe and all of us have been working very, very hard on focusing on, basically arming the sales force with the right education and enablement so they can have the conversations comfortably. We're not trying to make them into security experts, but we're trying to be able to focus them in on the business and operational challenges that the security teams have, that we have a unique approach to, and then at least get them to be interested in having the next conversation. And then now we've won. Now we've taken a much larger step forward in our selling process. So that's another one. And so we're constantly looking at what things are working and what things are not, and trying to fix the things that aren't working and trying to put more investments in the things that are.
That's great. But having a customer in 75% of the Fortune 1000, if you're already plugged in on the networking side, it must be a pretty warm intro over the security side. So it makes it, I would think, much easier for you with that warm intro. Yeah, you got to train and skill set and all that, but as opposed to somebody that's net new cold calling in, so that must be a big advantage.
It is a great assumption that is really not true. And I say that because that's what we all think, right? We go, oh, well, we're already in the company. Great introduction. Networking guys, security guys must be right down this, down the hall. Let's get the introduction. But networking security has always had a little bit of a chasm, right? And they roll up into the office of the CIO, but the networking guys are competing for the CIO's budget that they want to spend just as much as the security guys, and so they're a little bit adversarial relationship. And there is traditionally been, this is my lawn, that's your lawn. Don't come on either one. So we did have to do a lot of kind of creative thinking on how to get those people together. And so even from a marketing and field marketing standpoint, we worked with sales and came up with programs to say, okay, networking contact, buyer of ours, bring your security buddy to this event, and we figured out things to give away or whatever to try to entice them, door break, if you will. But we're not going to sell to them. We're just going to talk to them about the value of the data that you already have, networking person has bought our product, that if they leverage, they can actually increase the efficacy of the security. So we're just basically bring that person to the event or to the workshop. They'll leave with something fun to take home, as well as actionable best practice to leverage without having to pay an extra dime or not.
Oh, that's great.
Randy, I don't know if you see Chris's.
I was just going to pull that up. In his defense, he actually brought it up before you started talking about it. But he says, do your reps spend a lot of time educating versus selling?
Yeah. Yes, on the security side. And it's one of the challenges that we had to overcome, because our security product isn't like anything else out there. I mean, it kind of is unique. And so we did spend a lot of time in these conversations trying to explain to the buyer kind of what we did, right? They didn't know where to kind of put us in their architecture of their sales strategy. And we're talking about leveraging data that's coming from the network side, the DNS systems, the IP address management database, and allowing for faster investigation of your SOC team, and looking at the overall DNS layer and talking about how ransomware, 80 to 90% of ransomware has to leverage the DNS layer to get through, or DNS protocol to get through to the company that we're trying to infiltrate. Well, all these other systems are trying to fix the endpoint or the network or the identity system. Well, we're the ones that are actually managing the pipe of the DNS system, and we'll be able to see that. If you leverage our system, we'll be able to know what's coming across. So we're literally having these conversations, very technical and very tough to try to get that education of who we are and why it matters, and why they should buy us. And so that's why the category creation was such an important part of what we've done. Just really in the last 9 months, is starting this conversation with analysts in the market of putting us in this category of called XDR, which is very well understood and adopted in the security space. And XDR takes in the ingestion of multiple points of security, of the security data. And one of those points we're saying is DNS data. So we're creating a DNS detect and response to go along with endpoint detect and response, which goes along with network and detect and response, email like Mimecast, and all those things get ingested into this XDR strategy. So now when we walk in, we don't have to do this 35-minute conversation of educating on who we are and why it matters and what does DNS have to do with anything. Now we simply talk about, in the XDR framework, this is what you're going to get in the value that you're going to get, and why leveraging that is going to help with security efficacy or decrease investigation time. So it just became a much better conversation, and one that we can get to the selling quicker, versus the education piece of it.
Awesome. And then thanks for that, Chris. And Stephen asks, is the company growing its sales force? So you do have openings that you're hiring for.
Yeah. Yeah. One critical one. So, and it's on the topic of security. So the very first thing that we did as a company to try to help with network sellers selling into the security space was creating a security overlay, if you will, a technical security overlay, which in essence were, security SAs, if you will. We called them PSS. And the PSS team were to be taken along with any sales rep that wanted to leverage them to go and have the security conversation. And these people were like ex-CISOs and security practitioners turned SEs, if you will. And so they're great. And we made some great momentum. And then just in the last 4 years, we've now turned our security business, overall security business, into about $120 million business. The specific Blocks One Threat Defense product has grown from $0 to $80 million in those 4 years, which is fantastic. Now we want to ramp that up even faster. And so now what we're doing is we're hiring a cohort to that PSS individual that will be a cybersecurity sales executive. And so we are in the middle of hiring cybersecurity sales executives all around the world, and we have, I think, almost 20 openings, globally on that particular. And we're always looking for great talent. I mean, at the end of the day, our philosophy is we should always be recruiting great, capable talent to continue to bring into the business. We know we will never have a lack of a need for that, and so we will always have some capacity to hire in on the sales side for sure.
Awesome. Good. And actually, we didn't talk about this before, but we also have a recruiting business, Top Talent Recruiting, and we've done a little bit for you guys as well. So
That's right. For sure.
And then from an investor side, you've got two great private equity partners in Vista and Warburg. And I think your words were actually constructive and helpful as opposed to some of these disaster stories you hear.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember the first time I worked for a private equity firm, which was as software, TPG. I think I told some of my former colleagues that I was going to a private equity backed firm, and they were all like, that's not you shouldn't do that. And I really haven't had any bad experiences, even with TPG, and as was a great experience. Vista and Warburg, it's interesting having two very successful private equity firms owning 50-50 with the business. And they each have their areas of expertise when it comes to best practices. Of course, private equity firms look at a business and say, hey, this is a good, solid business, great product, great people. And we think that we can give them, kind of an operating playbook with best practices to actually increase the value to be able to return to the shareholders. And sometimes that can be very painful. Sometimes that can be very constructive. We've been very lucky here. There's been a few things that we've implemented that are straight from that playbook. One of them happens to be a really cool way for marketing and sales to be able to target the right customers. Kind of think about like the ICP plus the buyer persona that you create, and creating an algorithm to be able to help you grade the companies that we want to target on most likely to buy your product. And so that's an example of technology that I came in. I was like, that's fantastic. And we've done some cranks on that to continue to improve it. It's been great from a best practice. But it's also great to have some good resources. The community itself is good. We've been very happy with their guidance and counsel, as well as just always constructive and always willing to listen and give perspective. So it's good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any people there at Vista Warburg you want to give any shout outs to in particular?
Well, I'll tell you, there are some extremely smart people. One of our connections over there, Boeing, out of Warburg and Pincus, is probably one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Just an absolute computer of a brain. Can look at a spreadsheet, or look at a PowerPoint presentation, and have the 18 questions already figured out that we've never even thought about. He's been a lot of fun to work with. That's one that in particular I've been very excited. I have my counterpart at Warburg Pincus, or at least the person that I work with most, Sanjay Dolakaya, who is former CEO of Marketo and a longtime technology CMO and CEO. Has been just fantastic to work with. He's been, kind of a coach, mentor, and sometimes, just someone to bounce things off and get some good ideas on. He runs a really great community of CMOs within the Warburg Pincus community, and it's a great value. It's really good.
Oh, cool. All right. So now moving on, our title topic, from buyer persona to qualified opportunity. So maybe kind of high level, explain that a little bit more.
Well, yeah. And I think, I always like to think about it this way. Like there's three questions or three things that I always hear about. Like, right, you got to know your audience before you present, right? So that's not rule number one. If you're going to make a presentation, you got to know your audience. You always, as a sales rep, don't want to ask a question you don't already know the answer to. That's another one. And the other one we always hear in sales is you can't hit a target that you can't see. And all those, I think about those three in the context of the buyer, right? If you're selling a product and you don't know, what you're trying to sell to, what are you trying to fix? What's the pain that you're trying to solve for? You're not going to be very successful at that. If you don't know the things that are most important to the people you're selling to, you're going to having a tough time getting their attention and getting their engagement, right? And so, there's the concept of ICP, which we talked about. A lot of times, companies stop at the ICP, and I think that there is great value to go many layers deeper on understanding the actual buyer. Some motivational and psychological views of those buyers, but also very much focused in on their buying process, what they're looking for, what are the things that make them tick. And the better you get at that, the more likely you're going to improve the engagement of your audience, or your buying audience, from sales and marketing. From a marketing standpoint, you have the answers to the test. I always like to say, you have the answer to the test of what content should we create, what programs should we execute on to our audiences. You're also going to have a much better idea of what's important to those buyers to inform product innovation and roadmap. We always, we want to be very responsive to the sales field and what we're getting back from them on, hey, this deal stalled because we don't have this feature and whatnot. And of course, we will always try to do that. But if you understand what's most important to the buyers that we currently sell to, the buying center that we sell to, then you should have some good ideas of areas that we should try to improve or innovate on to be able to answer some of the other questions we don't currently answer. And then, I think the other aspect of having a really, really well thought out and well documented buyer persona for your products is it comes down to onboarding, something that we all have to deal with. As onboarding new reps, onboarding new marketers. When you have this well documented buyer persona, then once again they have the answer to the test. They already know. Okay, now I understand. What are the problems? What are the challenges? What are the goals? What are the metrics that they're being measured on of the buyers that we're trying to sell to? Now I can at least have a conversation. As technology companies, marketers, sales and marketing teams, we all too often start off onboarding with just, hey, this is what our product does and how it works, and here's all the bells and whistles, and isn't it cool? Look at the great UI and all that, because we're very proud of the technology we built. And seeing it more and more, it's actually becoming almost systemic across the tech industry, of focusing in on that technology and the features of the technology, and losing sight of what we always classically were trained. Don't focus on the features. Focus on the benefits. Focus on the business, operational, financial impact of leveraging those technologies. And so having those onboarding conversations when you're bringing those new reps in, starting there, and then getting to technology down the road, in my mind, is a much better equation and process.
Yeah. So it's almost, the alignment between sales and marketing is amazing. So it's sort of the first domino by definition. If you're kind of doing all this around persona, peeling back the onion, ICP, marketing knows what they're doing, where they're doing it. Sales knows what they're doing, how they're doing it. Anybody coming up to speed normally right away, they're going to be onboarded like that.
That's right. And it's funny because I think I've come to companies to ask, hey, how have we done on buyer persona research? Where's our buyer personas? And I'll get a slide that says, vice president of finance, and then has like 3 or 4 bullet points of what they care about. That's not what I'm talking about on buyer persona. And I'm also not a big fan of naming the buyer personas. This, you got to sell to Dan, or you got to sell to Jill, or whatever. That's the fluffy stuff, right? What I'm talking about is digging into understanding what was the thing that made the buyer wake up that day and say, I want to buy this. I need to solve this problem. Right. And so having conversations with your current customers or companies that have already bought a similar solution that you sell from a competitor, even that asking the questions, right? What happened that made you say, I need to solve this problem, or I need to buy something to solve a particular problem? And so that's getting down to the compelling event. What was the active pain that drove them to making that decision? We'll talk about Leighton here in a minute, but and asking that to 15, 20 different customers, you'll start to see a pattern. You'll start to see pattern matches of those compelling events. What were those things? And then you ask questions to say, okay, well then what were you trying to achieve? Okay, you made the decision to buy it. Great. Now, how many answers can you get for the question? What were the things that you needed to achieve with this solution? What were what were the success metrics and success factors of that? And then why wouldn't you buy? So if you were evaluating a bunch of solutions, what were some of the things that drove you to cross some of those solutions off the list, right? So you need to figure out what are the things to avoid, what are the danger areas, and to try to position against it. And then what are the things that were most important that drove your decision? So you have a list. What were the features, functionality, capabilities that were the most important, and why about the solutions you were looking for? And then what was your overall buying process look like? What were the influences? Where were the people you need to talk to? Where were the people you need to get budget for? Were there budget owners? Were you the technical buyer? Getting all that information, and then you ask this, and really all it takes is about 25 questions, 25 of these interviews to get a very clear picture of the commonalities of your buyers. And now you've got the answers to the test. You've got really, really good data to help the marketers go, okay, when I create content, I need to make sure I'm focused on, this buyer and these particular success factors that they were specific on, or this particular decision criteria that they wanted to hit on. So we only want to be able, like from a CMO standpoint, I'm telling the marketing team and the content marketing creators, you can't just create content that's across multiple buyers, different types of buyers, or audiences. It needs to be specific to one buyer and specific to one buyer and where they are in the buying process. Is this piece of content for someone that's looking for a solution? They know they have a problem, so now they're looking for a solution, or is this for that buyer now that they know what solutions are out there? We need to help them make the right decision, which is us. Is that content going to help with the decision the phase of the buying process? And so then it becomes very, very focused. Every time you see a piece of content come up, you go, who's this? Who's the audience? What buyer is it? Where they are in the buyer journey? So that's great in that standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. And from a sales standpoint, once again, you have all these things, and you're able to now map through the sales process and understand, what are the things I need to be able to hammer in on to help move to the next phase of the buying process, which is great. And then, on that decision criteria piece, all the things that are most important to the buyers, it actually helps product marketing and the product management to figure out. So if you all of a sudden you go, all right, I've seen commonality, there's 12 things that the buyers say are the most important things that a solution to solve this particular pain point have to have. And you look at those 12 things, you go, well, crap, we don't have any of those. Well, then you got a problem. Your sales reps are going to have a really tough time selling the product, and you need to go have a conversation with your product team to say, we need to solve some of these. But typically you're going to find at least 3 or 4 of things that you do really well that are on that list, and hopefully those 3 or 4 are unique in nature. And if you are uniquely positioned in the marketplace to answer those 2 or 3 or 4 that are critical criteria for the buyers that buy solutions that you're providing, then that's where you drive a truck through. That's where you set traps for competitors. That's where you create big awareness campaigns around what you do and why it matters in the framework of those 2 or 3 unique intersections of what you can do and what are most important to the buyers. Really, really great kind of pragmatic way to go about the marketing process.
So great. Have you published this? I mean, what amazing roadmap cookbook.
I mean, buyer personas is, interestingly enough, I think buyer persona was invented by a New York ad executive back in like 18.
Right, but you're taking it to much more practical.
Right.
level.
Well, right. So I guess my point is it's been around for a long time. We've been evolving it for a great deal of time. I've worked with a couple of research firms over the years. Buyer Persona Institute's an example of one out of the Pacific Northwest, who are very good, who leverage this kind of this the systematic way to go about the interviews and get in vet out the data that I'm just talking about, but then creating that documented version of each one of your buyers is the next step. And then you can't just let it die on the shelf. You've got to enable the sales reps, the current sales reps. You have to leverage it to do the onboarding. You have to make sure you're leveraging it as a litmus test against every piece of content, every program that you run in marketing, to make sure, okay, who's our target on this? Who are we speaking to? Where are they on the buying process? So it's an important piece of it.
That's great. And we have another question from Chris. You mentioned the importance of understanding the multiple levels of pain that your buyers are facing. Do you see any buying cycle differences in selling security solutions versus network?
Yeah, very much so. So it's interesting. The networking side of the business, that especially with the services that we sell to, Chris, majority of the time we're trying to uncover latent pain. We're trying to to talk to the network professional to tell them why their status quo or their free Microsoft system is no longer good enough, right? And so that's obviously a much tougher sell. It's always great to have compelling events that drive buyers to you, but that's where we are with the networking side. We have a great product. We have great customer examples and case studies and lots of data that tells us the areas to ask questions on. But we do have to ask questions, and we do have to uncover that latent pain. On the security side, it's a little different. The security teams all have a pretty good budget to work with. They're the hot hand right now. Maybe cloud operations is going to start kind of taking over the hot hand of the CIO organization. But security is always it's a board level discussion. So you always have resources to leverage from a budget standpoint that you can kind of tap into. The challenge there is not the pain. The pain is always active there. They are struggling to just keep their head above water and basically reply or answer to all the critical threats that are kind of popping up on their security operation command center screens. So for us, we have to try to jump in on that pain and frame ourselves in that context and the context of their pain, which is mean time to detection, how fast it is to, that it can detect the threat, and mean time to remediate. So how fast can they get rid of the threat? So we know that pain is active. We know what it is. And it just comes down to speaking that language and speaking our value and our product in the context of that language.
Awesome. And then you also started last year using MedPick for your qualifying framework as well.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we had as an organization that Mitch, kind of had to slog through his first year and looking at the overall pipeline that was created there. It's just like, we had this huge pipeline, and we were very frustrated that pipeline wasn't converting to revenue, to bookings as fast and at a higher success rate than it should have been. And of course, one of the challenges that we figured out, one of the problems we figured out was a lot of that pipeline was not really pipeline. It was just, it was hopes and dreams, and truly weren't qualified. And so leveraging MedPick allowed us to put together the framework in a process for the field that I'm very impressed with Mitch and his team on how well they applied it and governed it. So many companies go out and say, we're going to move to solution selling, or we're going to move to value selling, or we're going to create a new sales methodology, and they pay a bunch of money, they get some training, and they kind of try it for a little bit. They don't really lean in. They don't really make it part of an operating cadence and whatnot. And then you basically wasted your resources, and you're ending up here 2 years later buying the next buzzword in sales methodology. This team is took on the MedPick. We rolled it out just slightly before kickoff last year, literally 13 months ago. And there has been just an absolute maniacal focus on governance and application from the sales leadership down to the RD level, which is great. And I'll give you an example of how it all ties into the buyer persona that I just got to talk about, the buyer persona research. One of the things that you don't want to do is have your buyer persona research go stale, shrivel up like a raisin on a vine. Because what happens is markets changes, budgets changes, priorities changes, and all of a sudden what you created 2 years ago is out of date and no longer resonating. So you always have to keep these things fresh. So one of the things that we implemented in Salesforce was anytime a deal gets put into qualified stage of pipeline, it has to have a good justification in the why change as well as why Infoblox. So the reps have to come in and say, okay, I'm qualifying this and forecasting it, and I'm doing that because here is why the company is needing to buy a solution for their pain, and here is why they're going to buy us. And so they have to create that. And then, of course, 2 or 3 months down the road, if through the selling cycle it closes, maybe some of those things need to be tweaked, whatever. But before they hit send on the close, they do an update on those two things and make sure we have all the pertinent information. And then that email, and an email is created, automated email to the entire company. And it's the win and the whys. The win, WIN, and the whys. Hey, here's a win. We closed this deal, and here's the detail of how we sold it. And the biggest piece of detail that's important to us is, why did they change? Why do they need to change? And why do they choose us? And then that gets fed back into the persona research, so we can start to look at and update. Hey, we see a new priority that's popping up in this particular, for this particular product or this particular region or in this particular persona. And it's a great practice. And what that's starting to drive us to do is, we're starting to see, once again, pattern recognition. Sometimes there's a pattern recognition with a particular region. Oh, there's a government policy that came out, NIST 2, and this NIST 2 is mandating that the companies need to take action around DNS security. And so all of a sudden we see 2 or 3 deals come through, and the why changes that they're trying to be compliant to NIST 2. And we're like, wait a minute, that's a big deal. Let's start creating a marketing and a sales campaign specific to NIST 2 in Europe. Boom. And then all of a sudden, we'll see a pattern that says, we closed this, large financial institution, and one of the reasons why we closed it was because they had to hit some new security compliance, and they leveraged our solution to be able to do so. Oh, that's interesting. And all of a sudden, we see one more, a month later, see some patterns there, and then we start, creating stories and use cases specific to that particular compliance. And so we'll see it, sometimes regional, sometimes we'll see it vertically, and we can start to create new intelligence and new trainings for the sellers and whatnot for that. Yeah.
That's great. And then do you do the same thing on, I'll say, closed lost deals, then to try and figure out why they are and examine that and lessons learned?
It's a great suggestion. We don't do as well a job with closed loss, and quite honestly, I haven't found a lot of companies that I've worked with ever do well with closed loss without having to pay for closed loss third parties to do those calls in. I was the same way as a seller. What's a closed loss report? Well, it's documentation of why I suck as a seller. Like, think about it. Like, you're not gonna get the data that you're looking for, because right. you're saying, oh, you lost that big deal we were counting on. Can you give us a report on why? And so it's always a tough thing to ask a seller to do, and you generally aren't going to get the either an honest amount of data that comes out of it, or the data that would be actionable. I see Rick's question that just popped up on the external buyer intention data. And the answer is yes. And we leverage a couple different areas. Tech Target is certainly a solution that I've leveraged. I am currently leveraged today within our system. We also leverage 6 Sense for predictive and buyer intent, which is really cool information to overlay into. Okay, we've got pipeline. Here's some qualified opportunities, and then 6 Sense is actually saying, and here's the companies out of those that we know are in active buying mode because they're looking at other solutions in the system. But we're also pulling in information from HG Insights on firmographic and technographic data. We're freshening the database with D&B. So we're trying to pull in as much of the heuristics around the buyers and in the context of these companies and the companies that we're working with, to be able to say, these are good targets, these are okay targets, not as good as these, so let's focus here first and prioritize that. And in these particular ones, they're within this A grade of contacts or companies are actively in a buying mode, and so let's focus on those. But all of that goes into the engine to be able to help us target better from a account-based marketing standpoint, from a targeted selling standpoint. The sellers have a complete dashboard to be able to see their entire territory. Some of this data is in there to help them, be able to look at where they want to target the prospecting. Where do they want to say, okay, I'll target these 5 on the prospecting. I'm going to give these 10 over to my BDR to go hammer down and outbound and teaming with them. And then, working with the field marketing managers. Hey, these are the ones I want to make sure that are continually invited to any event that we have, because I want to try to drive them down a buying process. So it's all part of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Good to see you there. So before I run out of time, I know value selling is really important. Decision Link's a key partner for you there. Tell us more.
Well, and it all, once again, all ties into it. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to talk to specific metrics that we can, kind of dangle out in front of prospects to say, hey, if you want to increase or decrease your investigation time by 67%, we've got a number of different examples of that working, and that's great. That tells you an operational impact, but let me tell you the financial impact of that. And so we wanted to get a much better set of data, number one, and number two, much better way to be able to walk a prospect or customer through a process to be able to vet all that out and ultimately create an ROI that's compelling enough for them to go, okay, it's an opportunity cost if I don't make this decision. And Decision Link was that solution, and we've been a customer now for a little over a year. Wow, super impressed by the product. Not only is it very, very good at creating the data model. We leveraged the Forrester Total Economic Impact data, that we of course hired them to do, and it came up with a data set. Then we took that data set, put it into Decision Link in a very, very easy and systematic way. And then now the reps can kind of go in and just almost have a conversation with their partners or their customers about, how many security professionals you have in your SOC, and how many investigations you have to try to deal with a day. And you kind of walk down just general questions. Answering those questions just kind of fills out the data model, and it just pops out the ROI. And the cool thing is that they can go, wow, the prospect can say that it just seems completely unreasonable. Oh, okay. So let's go back and take a look at the inputs and figure out maybe we overestimated a couple. Let's just take down the cost of SOC employee down by $10,000, and let's drop this number of data centers, and then all of a sudden you come up with a number still pretty compelling, just not off the wall. And then they can now go leverage that to go help maybe find internal budget or help internally sell the solution. But the really cool thing is when you do all that, then you kind of push the button, the magic button, and all of a sudden it generates a handful of just beautifully branded, there's some work to do to get this up and running, but beautifully branded infographic on the ROI, or a PowerPoint presentation to walk through, in a closing meeting, the ROI, a full proposal based on the ROI. Like everything's all generated automatically, and of course then you can download those as a rep, and you can make edits or whatever. But the majority of the work is all done for you, and all based in the system. So it's great. We've been very, very happy with it, and we're so happy we're actually increasing the number of licenses and getting in the hands of more and more sellers and broadening our use of it. So
that's great. I mean, just think about today, CFO's job is really to say no for any kind of net new purchase on anything at all. You have kind of something that comes, in a nice wrap bow around, here's what it's going to do to help generate revenue, give you competitive advantage, more profit, cost savings, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of really Decision Link helps facilitate, hey, from a CFO perspective, boom, I want to buy this solution as opposed to something else. Not that there's anything that's 10 times better than you technically, but as opposed to some technical buyer who's, hey, here's all the features and here's the slides and all that. It's like, who cares, right? You care about what's it going to do to help the business.
Right. Well, and really pertinent for us is, remember I told you on the networking side, it's all latent pain, because most of the time they're just leveraging Microsoft DNS, the HTTP server. But if we can go in there and actually use the tool to show them that, hey, they're using a free tool, but it's not free. It's actually costing them a great deal of both financial and operational cost, because they're still leveraging a very unstable and hard to manage system. Well, now we can actually prove an ROI, rip out that old system, and you actually will save money, even though you're paying us for the service. It's very,
yeah. We had somebody, Jeff Goldberg, early on at EMC, rest in peace. But Mitch, Joe, Rick, others were kind of trained by him around all this kind of value selling. Sure. And for EMC early on, I mean, I was just a huge, and the product is great, but you got to be able to kind of spin it on that side, and you deliver those, how it works there, and it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. You're basically giving the you're arming the CFO with justification of why to go. Then you're arming your contact or your champion or your coach. Once again, a tool set to go now have the conversation internally and make them look much more strategic in why they want to make this decision.
Yeah, so great. Anyway, so time flies when you're having fun. We didn't get to a bunch as I predicted, but you've been amazing. So Brad Rinklin, EVP CMO at Infoblox, been fantastic having you. Thanks to Decision Link for sponsoring. For those that ask questions, thank you. And for those that are part of sales community, thanks. And if not, feel free to join with the free link that Tucker has there as well. So everybody have a great week. And Brad, thanks. You're
My
awesome.
pleasure, guys. Thanks for the conversation.